All right, guys, welcome to episode 5 of Inside Buzz. I'm your host, Mikey Domagala. This episode, we got Keith Hodges, NBA and all different kind of sports strength coach. He goes by Mind in Muscle on Instagram, Facebook, and he's always posting his videos. He trains Derrick Rose, the Holiday Brothers, and everybody out there. Keith, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So where do you train out of?
I train in Los Angeles right now. I utilize a facility called the Factory Training. And then I utilize a facility in Beverly Hills or West Hollywood, which will be called Monarch Athletic Facility once it's done being constructed here. So that's where I'll be most likely full-time.
Who are some of the athletes you train across all different kind of sports?
I got my first start when I was in Indiana, and my martial arts instructor was working with some of the Pacers, and he just wanted to teach them martial arts, but he said they wanted like 2 hours of workouts. And he was like, well, I can't teach them martial arts for 2 hours. He was like, so would you mind doing a strength and conditioning for them? And I'm like, perfect. So I started with Roy Hibbert. And at that point in time, I just read a couple books on like MMA strength and conditioning and just went as I learned. So I got better over time, but nowhere near what it was today. It was just more so training them to, like if they had a fight, just to get in better cardiovascular shape. And then as time went on, I started, getting better and adding, other things like with balance, explosiveness, et cetera, and then they stuck with me. So Roy ended up bringing probably about 6 or 7 more to Pacers. And at this time, this was a season before the Pacers went to Game 7 with the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. So that was my first time really, really working with like NBA athletes. Other than that, I have been training fighters, which is of course how I got, with them at the martial arts gym. And when moving to California, I was given an opportunity by Mike Hibbert, who was the Holiday's main trainer. He's with them now, of course. He travels with Drew, works with the Pelicans organization. And he was traveling with a tennis player. And he said, well, you're my next in line. You've been here for a while, so here's your opportunity. So with that, I got a chance to work with the Holiday Brothers, of course. At that time, it was, who was in the league? It was Benny Fowler, it was Johnson Batamasi, Jordan Cameron was still in the league at the time, Julius Thomas, Stephen Ridley, you name him, Frank Clark. It was a bunch of guys. Brian Beeman, I was with the Eagles when they won the Super Bowl. So it was, you name them, they came in the facility. And that was kind of like really when I got my feet wet with working with professional athletes.
So did you go to school for anything? Any kind of training?
Yep. I got my degree in exercise science and sports management from Indiana University. But I wanted to work in corporate fitness. I used to be a general manager of the gym. So at that time, I wanted to work in corporate sales and, honestly play it safe. The mindset was a little different in Indiana. It was just finding a good paying career. You grow up and raise a family and then just repeat that cycle. So when I moved to California, I went to school for continuing education to get some extra credits to get back in corporate fitness. And I worked in corporate fitness at Boeing and Beachbody, and it was really boring. I couldn't sit at a desk for, 8 to 10 hours a day. And, I couldn't do it. I was living in North Hollywood at the time, but, we were going to El Segundo for work. So that was a long commute, and then having to wake up, 4 a.m. every day, to get back and forth. That was a lot. So it kind of caught up with me then. I was doing neuromuscular therapy at the time, and that's when I saw Mike training, and I was like, well, what is this you're doing? Like, I've never seen this. And he was like, well, it's like 3-dimensional movement training, like functional strength and conditioning. And I was like, well, this is different. Like, how can I learn? And he said, all right, well, if you want to learn, be here at 5 a.m. tomorrow. And then from there, he started teaching me, and then I had success, and here I am today.
So how do you use social media to kind of help your personal brand and help you get clients?
Honestly, I'm not the best at marketing. When I was working with Derrick Rose, it went viral. That's got a lot more attention, of course, but I just usually, my page is what I've been told was boring. I just show what I can do. And, it's nothing spectacular, but I just had success. And then hopefully that my coaching, like they can see the coaching and see that, all right, well, he's serious about, his craft, and they can see the difference between that and then what looks cool on social media.
So when working with somebody like Derrick Rose, probably maybe your most famous of them all, the person you train, what are certain things you work on to ensure that he'll be healthy for the entire season?
Well, the best thing to do with athletes or any person, period, we never train two people alike. Your body has compensation patterns that are different than mine. So everybody comes in, they first get an assessment. And with that assessment, we build the corrective exercise platform. And then from there, we tailor it to what's your goal. If your goal is to move faster from laterally, or create a program after you do your corrective exercise platform to help you move better laterally. If you want to jump higher, we can create the program. So everything is customized. And that's the cool thing about movement is that I can work with the general public and work with athletes. But with most athletes, just a lot of stability, a lot of functional movement, a lot of mobility. They can run fast, they can jump high, but most of them have very tight hips, limited dorsiflexion, very tight calves. So we just want to get them moving better and just feeling and be able to access more of their bodies. And of course, the educational standpoint.
People tend to say that Derrick Rose lost his step since his MVP season and all of those years of gruesome injuries. Do you see him slowing down, or do you see him knowing his body more and gaining strength?
Well, if they watched him last year, you can see that he didn't necessarily lose a step. He's older and, of course, wiser, knows the game more. So his last year was his best year we had seen in a while. So I didn't necessarily see him slowing down. He doesn't play as reckless as he used to. Like with a lot of athletes when they get older and mature, the game slows down. So if you're comparing him to when he was a rookie or, with the Bulls, then it was great last year, good for the mid-range. And the mid-range is wide open now because it's just 3 and dunks now in the NBA. So I think he'll have a very efficient season this year. And he just seems to be, in love with the game again, happier.
Do you see that he trusts his body more than he once did?
It's hard for me to say because we've never spoken. And he's had other trainers, before me who worked with him hands-on with his injuries and recovering. So that's hard for me to say whether he trusts. I just know from our experience, he didn't seem to have limitations, and he was hungry during training. Very competitive. So
over the last few seasons, the NBA has been implementing certain things such as eliminating back-to-backs and even coaches giving their players minute restrictions. Is there something else you would want to see the NBA do and even other sports do to ensure that their players could stay on the field for as long as possible and not get long-term injuries?
It's funny that you asked that. I just had this conversation with another coach at the gym. I think in basketball, they play basketball year-round, and not enough time is taken or implemented into recovering and preparing their bodies for the upcoming season. It's just constant, playing basketball, and they never really stop and take time and put the ball down. As you can see, like Michael Jordan, there was a certain amount of time he took off, didn't pick up a basketball. He just worked on his body. So in basketball, I think that should be implemented more. I don't know how you do that, of course. In football, there's an off season. They take time, but football players, in my experience, like training, working, lifting weights or strength and conditioning more so than basketball players. Basketball players want to play basketball. So what I would like to see from the NFL, if I were an owner, what I would do would make mandatory MRIs to my athletes that paid. I don't know, maybe before, after a game, or during the week. But if I'm investing millions of dollars in my athletes, I want to make sure that they're ready to go. As you see now more than ever, there's a lot of non-contact injuries. You look at what happened to Kevin Durant, unfortunately, last season. I don't think he should have played. But, it's hard to say when you get somebody that competitive in an organization that wants to win a championship. So.
Do you agree with minute restrictions in the NBA, even if a player doesn't even have an injury that just occurred?
That's hard. I think there would be less minute restrictions if they didn't play as much basketball in the offseason. It took time to repair the body. LeBron James is a great, example. He takes so much care of his body, and I think that hopefully that catches fire and becomes, an everyday part of NBA culture. So I think that if you can get them to take more time to put emphasis on recovery, preparing the body, corrective exercise, et cetera, I think that load management won't be as big as an issue. But, who knows? I'm not inside everybody's bodies, and everybody's feeling different. So if somebody has an injury or just not feeling well, it's hard to say you got to play 82 games a season. So,
for players like Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson who are in the midst of long-term injuries, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would tell them just to stay encouraged, It can be frustrating, the recovery process. I've never torn ACL or ruptured an Achilles, but I know with the injuries I've had, and I was nowhere near on their level, you want to come back as fast as possible, and it can be frustrating. So I would just tell them to stay encouraged. As far as the recovery process, I don't know the extent of the injuries because, I wasn't working with them. So I would take the time, if it were me personally, and make sure that I was back 100%. But the thing is, a lot of that is confidence too, and just trusting your body. For anybody with coming back from injuries, I would say just to look at not just the area injured, but what caused it. Whether it's a unstable foot, unstable knee, something that could lead to a non-contact injury. I think that we should find out ways to make that preventative. And that's why I think where I would make MRIs mandatory to where we can build the best bodies to make sure that our investments or the owner's investments are able to go.
So Keith, are you a sports junkie yourself? And with your knowledge of how to strengthen and condition, do you apply that knowledge to yourself?
Oh yeah, I'm still a student. I experiment on myself the most. Out here in Los Angeles, you're out here with who's who, celebrity trainers, doctors, physical therapists, and it's very competitive. And I would say that the thing that I've had working for me is just the application and coming up with creative ways to challenge the body and always being willing to learn, take constructive criticism. A lot of people who have success and they feel, or what I've seen is they seem to feel that their way is the best way and it's the only way, and they trash other methods, et cetera, et cetera. I don't trash other methods. I try and take something from here, and here, and be able to apply it and make it the best. You want to have the most functioning body, and to be the most functional, you can't just train one way.
So how is LeBron James doing what he's doing, pushing 35 years old and heading into his 17th NBA season?
I think what separates him is that he understands the need for maintaining health and taking care of his body in the offseason, making sure he's ready to go.
Now, how much does genetics have to do with a player's health or somebody like LeBron James?
Genetics plays a big role in it. I mean, he was a grown man in high school, so you guys have people who are freaks of nature, and so genetics plays a big role. And then in the other part, you have people who just work themselves to that level. But genetics does play a big role. As far as how much, that's hard to say. But, there are some very God-gifted people out here who don't work as hard as some people who aren't. You have to have the skill because you're going to get older. And when the athleticism fades, if you don't work on your game, you won't last. So you see someone like Blake Griffin, who was, super athletic, but now you see he's developed a jump shot so he can be able to produce on the court. Vince Carter, he slowed down. You saw that he was how long he was able to play. Jordan, the second time around, he wasn't the same Jordan before. He had more of a mid-range game, Kobe, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to develop the skill because you won't always be young.
So you train all three Holiday brothers, Drew, Justin, and Aaron. Have you ever trained with them all together?
Yeah, I was given the opportunity when Mike started traveling with the tennis players, so I worked with all of them. Aaron came a couple of times. It was mostly Justin and Drew a couple years ago.
Okay.
And that was awesome because that was, they were really willing to give me a chance. And, with, top-tier athletes like that, not a lot of them are willing to do that, They have to be able to trust you with their body and trust it what you're doing. And, they gave me an opportunity once Mike gave me a green light. So I'm very fortunate for that.
Can you touch on Drew Holiday's upcoming season? Have you spoken to him about anything? Have you worked with him recently?
I haven't worked with him recently. He's with Mike. Now that Mike's not traveling, he's with his full-time trainer. But I've seen it work, and, I think it's going to be a great season for all three of the guys.
What's the most important factor for any athlete in any sport to remain healthy?
Nutrition's a big component. Corrective exercise, mobility, and just strengthening your weaknesses. So you have to eat well because, bad food causes the joints to inflame, which can, limit recovery. If you don't work on areas that you need to work on, that can cause injury. So that's why I think corrective exercise. Mobility is just being able to access your body and be able to move with control. So I think all those are, important. It's kind of, different people rank them differently, but I guess it depends on the individual and what they need. One person may be more mobile than the other person would have bad eating habits. This person may have great eating habits but doesn't work hard, doesn't work on mobility. So it's just strengthening your weaknesses and trying not to have any weak links.
Can you go into the science of training Derrick Rose and certain workouts that you have done with him to strengthen something in his game?
The science of most athletes is just to build better bodies and just teach them. Most athletics are a lot of quad dominant. So basketball is quad dominant, football is quad dominant, running a lot of quad dominant. So a lot of tight hips. So what we do is we specialize in posterior chain development. So what we want to do is work on posture, realigning the body, build strong glutes, strong hamstrings, and, loosen up the hips, loosen up the quads, et cetera, along with the corrective exercise. So the goal is just to build this posterior chain. That's where all your horsepower comes from. And then just mostly education and a lot of mobility and just teaching him and introducing him things he can do during the season. Just stay mobile, stay loose.
What separates your style of strength and conditioning to somebody else?
When I was in high school, the strength and conditioning was bigger, stronger, faster, and it was just lifting weights. Heavy, very slow. Didn't matter how you moved the weight. You just wanted to be able to put on size, but that doesn't necessarily mean strength. A bodybuilder who wants to lift weights is going to lift heavy weights, but is going to move the weight slow. An athlete, they're going to use more fast twitch fibers. So they're not going to move as much weight. They want to focus on how fast they can move the weight. So what separates me from, I guess, traditional strength and conditioning is just the overall functioning of the body. The question is that I was asked by Mike is, well, how strong is strong? Strength is subjective. So just because this person can bench 500 pounds doesn't mean he can get on the basketball court, and score 40 points. He may not score a basket at all. So like Kevin Durant only benched 185 once, if he even did that. I bench press more than Kevin Durant, but if I get on the basketball court, I can't move him around. So the goal, what I do is just to make you stronger in movement. If you want to get quicker, going downhill, getting to the basket, you want to work on first step explosion. Now, traditionally, a lot of people just say, okay, we're going to do heavy back squats. But how does that translate to you driving to the basket or changing direction? So we're not going to lift as much heavy weights as traditional strength and conditioning. It's just how we're going to lift and movement in all three different phases of 3 dimensions of movement. So in every plane of motion, you want to be stronger. And change the direction, the laterally, the transverse, along with making you, less susceptible to injury, which is, the best thing. So these are $1 million athletes, and especially in the NFL with the money is not being guaranteed, they can't afford to get injured. And in basketball, even though the money is guaranteed, they don't want to risk any long-term or future contracts they can get. So we make them stronger in terms of movement in whatever direction they want to move. But most importantly, it's to be injury prevention and a lot of recovery, lots and lots of recovery. I think that's the most important factor with training is you can train as hard as you want, but if you aren't ready to go on a night-by-night basis, and I think that what should be implemented too with limiting like load management or back-to-backs is making sure that you're forcing or implementing recovery measures for your team to make sure they can go night in and night out and be as close to 100% as possible.
All right, Keith, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you giving me such great insight on what you do. Guys,
thank you for having me.
No problem. That was Keith Hodges, goes by Mind and Muscle. Check him out on Instagram and Facebook. See what he does on a daily basis, whether it's training Derrick Rose, the Holiday Brothers, or other professional athletes. All right, Keith, thanks again.
Thank you.